Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rouse. Jataka number 504. Bhallāṭiya-Jātaka. Was a king Bhallāṭiya, etc. This story the master told while living at Jetavana monastery about Malika, the Jessamine bride. One day we are told there was a quarrel between her and the king about conjugal rights. The king was angry and would not look at her. I suppose, she thought, the Tathagata does not know that the king is angry with me. When the master learned of it, next day, he looked for alms in Benares, accompanied by the brethren, and then went to the gate of the king's palace. The king came to meet him, and relieved him of his bowl, took him up on the terrace, set the brethren down in due order, gave them the water of welcome, offered them excellent food. After the meal he sat down on one side. "Why," asked the master, "why does not Malika appear?" He said, "It is her own foolish pride in her prosperity." The master said, "O great king! Long, long ago when you were a fairy, you kept apart for one night from your mate, and then went mourning for 700 years. Then at his request, he told a story of the past. Once upon a time, a king named Bhallāṭiya reigned in Benares. Seized with a desire to eat venison broiled on charcoal, he gave the kingdom in charge to his courtiers, secured himself with the 5 weapons, and with a well-trained pack of clever ancestry hounds he issued on from the city and went to Himalaya. He traveled along the Ganges until he could get no higher. Then followed a tributary stream for some distance, killing deer and pig, and eating the flesh broiled, until he had climbed to a great height. There when the pleasant stream ran full, the water was breast high, but at other times, it was no more than knee deep. At that time there were fish and tortoises of all sorts gambolling. Sand at the water's edge like silver. Trees on both banks bending beneath a load of flowers and fruit. Many a bird and bee well drunken with the juice of fruit and honey of flowers moved about in the shade, where herds of all manner of deer did frequent. Now on the bank of this beautiful mountain stream 2 fairies fondly embraced and kissed one another, then fell a weeping and wailing most pitifully. As the king climbed Mount Gandhamadana by way of this river bank, he saw these 2 fairies. What can they be weeping about in this manner? Thought he. I will question them. A glance to his hounds, a snap of the fingers, and at this sign the thoroughbred dogs, which knew their work well, crept into the underwood and crouched down on their bellies. As soon as he saw they were out of the way, he laid down his bow and arrow case and other weapons by a tree that stood near, and without letting his footsteps be heard stole gently up to the fairies, and asked them, "Why do you weep?" To explain this, the master repeated 3 stanzas. Was a king Bhallāṭiya, and out hunting he would go. Climbs the fragrant mount, and finds it full of fairies and flowers that blow. Straight he quiets every hound. Lays bow and arrow case on the ground. Forward steps, to ask a question. Where a pair of fairies were found. Winter's gone. Then why return? To talk and talk beside the burn. O you human-seeming creatures! What men call you I would learn. To the king's question, the male fairy said nothing. But his mate answered as follows. Mala, 3 peak, yellow hill. We traverse, following each cool rill. Human like the wild things deem us. Huntsmen call us goblins still. Then the king recited 3 stanzas. Though like lovers you caress, you weep as full of deep distress. O you human-seeming creatures! Why this weeping? Come, confess. Though like lovers you caress, you weep as full of deep distress. O you human-seeming creatures! Why this sorrowing? Come, confess. Though like lovers you caress, you weep as full of deep distress. O you human-seeming creatures! Why this mourning? Come, confess. The stanzas which follow were said by each in course of address and answer. We apart one night had reclined, both loveless, full of bitter pain. thinking each of each. But never will that night come back again. Why then spend that night alone? Which cost you many a sigh and groan. O you human-seeing creatures! Money lost. A father gone. Shaded thick the river flows. Between the rocks. A storm arose. Then with anxious care to find me. Right across my loved one goes. All the while with busy feet. I gathered your me and meadow sweet. All to make my love a garland. And myself, when we should meet. Clustering harebell, violet blue. And white daffodil flower fresh with dew. All to make my love a garland. And myself, when we should meet. Then I plucked a bunch of rose. That is the fairest flower that grows. All to make my love a garland. And myself, when we should meet. Flowers next and leaves I found. And spread them thickly on the ground. Where the livelong night together we might slumber soft and sound. Sandal and sweetwood soon I pounded small upon a stone. Perfume for my love's limbs making. Sweetest perfume for my own. By the river flowing fast. I gathered lilies to the last. Evening came the river swelling. Made it hopeless to get past. There we stood on either shore. Each on other gazing over. How we laughed and cried together. Ah! That night we suffered in pain. Morning came, the sun was high. And soon we saw the river dry. Then we crossed, and close embracing. Both at once we laugh and cry. 700 years but 3. Since we were parted, I and he. When two loving hearts are separated. Seems a whole long life to be. What the limit of your years? If this by rumor old appears. Or the teaching of the elders. Tell it me, and have no fears. 1,000 summers, strong and hale. Never deadly pains assail. Little sorrow, bliss abundant. To the end love's joys prevail. The king thought as he listened, these creatures, who are less than human, go weeping for 700 years for one night's parting. And here am I, lord of a realm of 300 leagues, leaving all my magnificence and wandering about the forest. It is a great mistake. He returned immediately. Arrived at Benares, the courtiers asked him whether he had seen any marvelous thing in the Himalayas. He told them the whole story, and from then gave alms and enjoyed his wealth. Explaining this matter, the master repeated this stanza. Thus instructed by the fairies. The king returned upon his ways. Ceased to hunt, and fed the needy. And enjoyed the fleeting days. 2 more stanzas he added. Take a lesson from the fairies. And quarrel not, but mend your ways. Otherwise you suffer, like the fairy. Your own error all your days. Take a lesson from the fairies. And bicker not, but mend your ways. Otherwise you suffer, like the fairy. Your own error all your days. Now arose the Lady Mallika from her couch, when she heard the Tathagata's advice, and joining hands she made respectful act of homage, while she repeated the last stanza. Holy man, with willing mind. I hear your words so good and kind. Blessings on you. You have spoken. All my sorrows left behind. Ever afterwards the king of Kosala lived with her in harmony. This discourse ended, the master identified the birth. At that time the king of Kosala was the fairy, Lady Mallika was his mate, and I myself was King Bhallāṭiya.